my documentary, we had to do something on race. There's all these movies about race, and we've been watching race reels, for instance, and then almost all of the movies we've been watching are all about sort of black people and white people, and none of them really touched on sort of other races.
Ethnicity has to do with cultural aspects and where you live and how you're raised.
I never knew what the difference was. I always thought they were the same. I don't really know.
Myself, when I think about ethnicity, I think ethnicity encompasses culture. A lot of different titles and labels out there, and it's almost really entirely up to the person.
All right, I think that your ethnicity is really how you relate yourself to your family.
Ethnicity is how you describe yourself, and it's more to do with culture than race.
Your race is more physical and how society sees you.
I think race is a person's identity. It doesn't necessarily have to be their culture. It's like where your ancestors are from, and it's basically how you what you look like.
I define race as genetics and your makeup, but not necessarily how you identify.
We define race on the physical, what we see. We look at physical characteristics and we try to put people in a particular box. And even though someone may look white, they may consider themselves African American, or someone may appear African American, they may consider themselves white.
How you were brought up, depending on the way that your family treated your race. So I guess race kind of refers to culture as well as just sort of the color of your skin.
In part-time diversity, he asked all of the black students that he interviewed, do you consider yourself part of Brookline diversity? He didn't ask the Asian person if they consider themselves part of the diversity. Sort of that got me wondering, why is it that whenever we talk about race, it's always about black people or white people?
It has to do with our history, that we have a lot of history with tensions with African Americans, with the civil rights movement and everything.
I think a huge part of that is how, in education and in school, we always focused on slavery and in history, and we never talked a lot about the immigration years. For first grade to seventh grade, we always just talked about slavery, black and white, and we never talked about different races.
Mostly just because it's part of our history, and you're supposed to learn history so you don't repeat it.
One has to understand the history of race in this country. When you look at the video, you look at all the footage, you read about the civil rights struggle in various books and magazines, you really don't hear a lot about Asian Americans or Hispanics. You really hear about black people and white people.
History of our country, and it's just, I think, a more prominent thing, at least in certain areas.
But I also think that nowadays, Latino and sort of Mexican, Puerto Rican, Dominican, that type of era, because they're all coming to America at this point. So
I think that there's a lot of racism in other races as well. Racism towards other races besides black people and white people is not categorized as racism. It's almost not taken seriously.
I wouldn't really know because I don't think I'm old enough to really compare it to what it was 10 years ago. But I think it would make sense that because we all have all these problems with immigration, obviously people would start to segregate more with Latinos and Mexicans.
I think we definitely should start opening up. It's because in reality, it's not just black and white. There's so many different races. So I feel like it's time, in order for everybody to be accepting, we have to move on, and all the children have to be taught that it's not just black and white, and there's different races that have issues as well.
I mean, I think we have to broaden the scope. I mean, again, United States is a melting pot. This country is a lot more diverse now than it was 50 years ago.
I think people have to look at race not as like race equals race and that we're all equal, and there's nothing that like makes us unequal.
There's one race, as everyone says sometimes, the human race.